It was 40 years ago this month that 46 women sued Newsweek magazine, the first group of media professionals to sue a company for gender discrimination. The latest issue of Newsweek looks at what's changed since then and what hasn't changed. Here to talk about it are Newsweek senior writer Jessica Bennett and Lynn Povich, who was one of the original plaintiffs from the 70s. 5 years later, she became Newsweek's first female senior editor. Good morning to both of you. Good morning. Congratulations on paving the way for the rest of us. So back then, you were being told women don't write for this magazine.
Right. And we were in a class of women called researchers that you couldn't get out of and you couldn't get ahead. And meanwhile, men who were equally educated, coming out of Harvard or Radcliffe or Columbia Journalism School, were being hired as writers.
And they called them dollies.
They called them dollies. Very Mad Men. Right?
Very Mad Men.
Very Mad Men. So today, women, many women write for Newsweek, but women make up 50% of the workforce. Jessica, how far do you think we've come?
I mean, I think we've come immensely far, and there was a new report out late last year by Maria Shriver, I'm sure you guys saw it, that looked at the current state of the American woman, and as part of it, it basically declared that the battle of the sexes is over. And we've certainly come a long way, and women are now entering the workforce in equal numbers as men. But we haven't come.
Here comes the but.
Exactly. We haven't come far enough, and women still make up just 3% of Fortune 500 CEOs. We're less than a quarter of law firm partners and politicians, and I think that there's really a long way to go.
And there's disparity too in how much women earn. Of course, there are exceptions versus men.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's interesting is that the argument has often been it's motherhood. Women are opting out of work. They want to care for their children. I'm sure that you faced some of these issues and are thinking about them as well. But what we've found in reality is that young women entering the workforce make some 20% less than their male counterparts in their first jobs. And this
Who
is
are
across
equally qualified and just as educated,
absolutely,
correct?
and we earn higher GPAs in college, and actually more of us are graduating from college.
Do you find this gender gap, it only happens or primarily happens in media, or are you seeing it across
I think it's across
sectors?
the board. I mean, it's certainly in media where at major magazines our bylines are outnumbered by a rate of 7 to 1, but it really goes across all industries.
Would you have thought, Lynn, 40 years ago when you fought this battle and won, that we would still be talking about this issue all these decades later?
In many ways, no. We just thought the problem was getting access and what was then called getting in the pipeline, and that once there were those of us there in numbers, we were equally educated. We thought by merit we would get there. And we didn't realize perhaps all the subtle kinds of discrimination that has happened. And in fact, the lack of knowledge of this history as well. I mean, I'm writing a book about our suit today just because people don't realize how similar some of the issues still are.
They are. They may not be as easy to spot. They may be subtly different, but they're still there.
Yeah, they are still there.
What do you think are the main similarities? Like you close your eyes and you hear Jessica speak, and it sounds just like you 40 years ago.
Well, in a funny way, I said to Jessica, it's like Betty Friedan's The Problem That Has No Name. It's sort of like we're here, but somehow we're in meetings and we're not being taken seriously, or why are the guys' stories getting in the magazines and ours aren't, or people are getting promoted by managers who feel more comfortable, perhaps, with men. And those are the subtle things. And working in a subjective business where someone can just say your article isn't as good as is very hard.
So let's talk about moving forward. Jessica, what do you think is the best way to combat this sort of sexism in the workplace?
Well, I think the first step is talking about it, and we're talking about it. So I think that is going to take us leaps and bounds. I mean, we need to get young women engaged, I think. And one of the problems for young women like myself is that we are of this generation where we thought these problems had been solved. In many ways, we didn't learn about feminism in school. We didn't know our history.
That's true.
And then suddenly we entered the workforce and something was amiss. So I think talking about them, I mean, I think the fact that we're writing about these issues of sexism at Newsweek in our own magazine is very, very impressive.
As do I. Thank you so much for taking the time, Jessica and Lynn. Appreciate it.
Take care.
A lot happens early on The Early Show, weekday mornings on CBS.